Hey yo everyone! I was debating if I even wanted to make this video this week because it's so polarizing and a bit of a Debbie Downer, but no big news came up to save me from it, so here we are. The Switch 2 has finally been revealed and reactions are generally pretty positive, but there are some major caveats that I'm sure you're all aware of. Today, I want to be another random YouTube dude giving his thoughts on this next era of Nintendo and how it could possibly shape the gaming industry moving forward. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. Alrighty, so, the Switch 2. I already made a video going over the biggest reveals about the console, but a lot of stuff has come out since that initial direct. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The console price itself. The Switch 2 is set at $450 MSRP with a $500 option that includes Mario Kart World. At $450, the Switch 2 is 50% more than the original Switch. Now, I've seen some people get a bit sticker shocked at that price jump, and understandably so, but I think the price is a pretty fair deal for what you're getting here. I mean, the jump from the original Switch to the Switch 2 is pretty significant. Sure, it's not completely reinventing the console, but then again, I don't think anyone wanted it to. The Switch was a perfect concept for a video game console, it was just severely underpowered. Now with this upgraded Switch 2, you're getting a bigger console, a massive leap in hardware, bigger storage, updated Joy-Cons, and a bunch of other quality of life improvements. I mean, if you're a kid with no concept of money, the Switch 2 has got to be one of the coolest things you've ever seen, right? Anyway, when we compare the original Switch and its features with the Switch 2 price and its updated features, I personally think it's a fair deal. Yeah, I would have loved OLED, but LCD does keep the price down by a significant margin, and HDR support can do quite a bit of heavy lifting. But the most common comparison I see get thrown around is the Steam Deck, which has a base option of $400, compared to the Switch 2's $450, so let's talk about that. The Switch 2 features a 7.9-inch LCD screen with HDR support. It outputs at 1080p and can get up to 120 frames per second. That last part is actually crazy. That's a really impressive spec, especially coming from Nintendo, who has historically focused on weaker consoles that have mass appeal. Of course, not every game is going to be able to max out the frame rate, but it's still cool to see that some of them will. The Steam Deck's LCD screen is also pretty sweet, but it is definitely a step down from the Switch 2. The Steam Deck has an 800p resolution, about an inch smaller than the Switch 2's, and a refresh rate of 60Hz, or about half of the Switch 2's 120. The power of the two consoles is a bit tricky to compare because Nintendo uses a custom-designed NVIDIA chip, and as far as I can tell, those specs haven't been fully revealed to the public yet. We might have to wait until the June 5th launch date to get a real grasp of how much of a beating this chip can actually take. Other than that, the two consoles are pretty similar in layout, weight, and external ports. The Steam Deck's battery has a slightly longer runtime, but that of course is subject to the game you're playing. So on the surface, these two handhelds are pretty comparable. I don't think you'd be disappointed with either, honestly. One benefit that the Steam Deck has is that it's owned and operated by Valve, who of course runs Steam itself. That means the Steam Deck has a wide variety of PC games to choose from. Not all of them will run great on the Steam Deck, but the amount of sheer content for it is pretty incredible. Nintendo, on the other hand, will most likely get a bunch of indie support for the Switch 2, just like they did for the original, but definitely won't have that same plethora of PC content that the Steam Deck will enjoy. Instead, the Switch 2 will have what most Nintendo fans care about the most: actual Nintendo games. Nintendo seems to be part of a dying breed of video game publishers who will continue to do console exclusives. If you want to play the new Mario Kart or Zelda game, you're gonna have to get a Switch 2. I mean, I guess there are ways to play them elsewhere, but we don't talk about that here. So ultimately, both consoles are great, and depending on the type of gamer you are, you might be leaning towards one more than the other. The Steam Deck is great for PC games, but if you're a console guy, then I think the Switch 2 might be more appealing. Nintendo exclusives, a highly accessible ecosystem, a 4K dock, which is amazing, and just the fact that games will hopefully be better optimized for the Switch 2 because of its broad appeal. It's a premium console that has a premium price tag. Yeah, it sucks to shell out 450 bones for a handheld, but the Switch 2 answers all of my complaints from the original Switch, and in my opinion, goes above and beyond what I expected hardware-wise. With that being said, Nintendo could have done a much better job of announcing the price of the console. For one, they didn't even show it during the Direct. That makes me think they knew it wasn't going to go over well with their audience, which was absolutely correct. Secondly, They went ahead and pulled the classic Sony and Microsoft move of saying if you can't afford the console, then you can play our older ones. Video game history is just a flat circle, isn't it? Also, we haven't really gotten into tariffs, and to be honest, I don't really want to, but we probably should at least a little, right? Nintendo announced a pre-order date of April 9th, but had to roll that back in the United States because of the current administration's tariff policies, leaving a lot of US consumers concerned that the $450 price tag was about to get even bigger. However, at the time of me writing this, President Trump just rescinded his tariff policy for everyone except China, so I'm hoping that $450 is still the price at launch. Nintendo does a lot of their manufacturing in Vietnam, and since the tariff policy is only paused for 90 days, I think it would be in their best interest to ship as many units as possible to the US before, and who knows what happens next. I guess all we can hope is that the price isn't jacked up any further and there's enough supply for people to get that $450 model if they so choose. But now we gotta talk about the real point of controversy, the game prices. I mean, this is just disgusting. Mario Kart World, the big killer app for the Switch 2, is launching at $80. $80! Look, I'm trying to see things from both sides here, but this is a tough pill to swallow. On the one hand, I get it, video game development has skyrocketed in costs these past few generations. And with this new ideology that all games should last forever via DLC or live service stuff, then yeah, I guess a payment of $80 could be justified, but only if it's a one-time thing. They cannot possibly expect to charge for any DLC and not get crazy backlash in return. Also, I think we have to be real with ourselves as gamers. I think we all knew this was inevitable. Video game prices have finally begun to climb, which is honestly incredible that they stayed at a standard $60 for so long when everything else was getting more expensive. Let's not be naive here. If it wasn't Mario Kart World, then GTA 6 was certainly going to pull something like this. I mean, there are rumors floating around out there that GTA 6 could retail at $100. What are we gonna do? Not buy Grand Theft Auto 6? It's terrible, and I don't like the precedent this is setting for the industry, but it's the reality we're seeing ourselves in. I think it just feels like such a massive jump when there are still AAA games being sold at $60, and all of a sudden the new Mario Kart game is $80 Renos. If this would have been rolled out more gradually, then I think people wouldn't be as upset, but good lord, I don't know if my wallet can keep up with this. My biggest fear is that this is just the canary in the coal mine, and video games will no longer stick to an agreed upon standard price, or at least one that isn't $60 anymore. If we're trying to stay positive here, we don't know for sure that all first-party Nintendo games will be $80 moving forward. For example, Donkey Kong Bonanza, another first-party tentpole that will drop in July, is launching at $70. Doug Bowser, CEO of Nintendo of America, I know, ironic name, said that first-party games will be using variable pricing. Basically, they're going to pick and choose which games will be more expensive than others based on what they believe people will get out of it. For example, Mario Kart World is $80 because of the amount of content and replayability, while Donkey Kong Bonanza lacks that sort of continuous replay value. I'm going to be honest, I do not like this, at all. I mean, everyone values games differently. If you ask my little sister what she would value Minecraft at, she would say $1 million or something because she's weird. But if you asked her to value a game like Elden Ring, which is a relatively hardcore game, she'd probably say $60. Meanwhile, if you ask my friend about Elden Ring, he'd say it's easily worth $100 with the amount of time and fun he's had with it. My point is, variable pricing is so subjective, and I think it's just bad. It's going to make people really pick and choose what games they spend money on, and personally, I think that's going to raise expectations for expensive games and make the video game industry somehow even more toxic. Don't get me wrong, I'm really enjoying this new Assassin's Creed game, but if Ubisoft said that based on the size of the open world and the length of the story, they were going to price the game at $100, I never would have even given it a shot. Now, how would people feel about Nintendo games doing this? Metroid Prime 4 looks freaking incredible, and I'm going to buy it day one, but it's going to be a lot harder to convince first-time Metroid players to drop $80 on a game that they're not for sure they'll even enjoy. I just think this will really hurt the industry in general. People will have to be more selective with the games they buy, which might mean that smaller studios or indie titles will be left behind for those big AAA experiences. Some people just might not be able to afford experimenting with new games because you could basically be spending $80 on something that you might not enjoy at all. My only hope is that history will repeat itself and people will be priced out of the Switch 2 and its games like they were with the 3DS at launch. If you didn't know, the 3DS was deemed too expensive when it came out, and the sales suffered because of that. In less than a year, Nintendo slashed the price by nearly $100 and gave out some free game vouchers to anyone who purchased the handheld at the original cost. Now, I'm not sure if Nintendo would do something like that with the Switch 2 because things are just so different this time around. They have a lot of cash from the Switch's success, and the economic state of the world is incredibly volatile at the moment. But we all know that the only way to truly make a statement against giant corporations is with our wallets. If people can't afford Nintendo games, they won't buy them, and the sales will reflect that. Maybe that will be enough for Nintendo to backtrack on their price gouging. I guess only time will tell how this all plays out. Until then, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of the Switch 2? Worth the price? Or would you rather buy a Steam Deck, or maybe even an Xbox Series X or PS5 at that rate? And what about the variable pricing for games? I think it's a great time to be a Nintendo fan. The Switch 2 and its upcoming games all look incredible. It just happens to also be a terrible time to be broke. But I'd still love to hear all of your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It of course means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll catch you in the next one.